Sayonara.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Talking to the Doll Benfica Podcast, episode number 271. My name is Alfredo. I'm here tonight with Steve Santos and Dave de Oliveira up in the Great White North. What's going on, fellas?
You know, it's been a long-awaited podcast, but here we are.
Long awaited.
Yeah, we've been on
yeah.
hold, but that's okay. Understood. Alfredo now has heat in the house, and we're good to go.
Oh, I thought I set this to be private, but looks like we're public.
Hey, cameras off. Cameras off.
Anyway,
only Dave looks pretty today.
Yeah, Cristiano's around here too. So when he comes in, I guess I'll introduce him. But here we are, episode number 271. On tonight's podcast, we will look back at Benfica against Rio Ave this past weekend at Stade de Luz, and we'll look ahead to the very, very, very tricky and mysterious, if you want to call it, fixture against Portimonense this coming Saturday. But before we get going, I just want to give a shout out to Sergio and Gracia and Conversas a Benfica. He got not only did he get Nuno Gomes on his show, and if you haven't checked that out, definitely go on YouTube and check that out. Look for Conversas a Benfica. You got Nuno Gomes on the show, but he also got a 3-page article on Record on Sunday also. So a big shout out to him, and obviously he's been a big supporter of our podcast, and we're gathering quite a little bit of a group here, of a movement, an independent movement of independent projects about Benfica that are not tied to the club in any way. We have ourselves, we have Sergio and Gracia. We also have Benfica FM, which is a podcast in Portuguese about Benfica. And we have Brian from Bermuda, the Benfiquista Podcast. So we're getting to be quite a little bit of a tertulia, if you will, or a group here. And obviously we all do it for the love of the club. We're not connected to the club in any way. And we're independent that we'd like to express our opinions. And really, I think that fits a lot with the identity of who Benfica is and what the club is, in the fact that Benfica é do povo. So Benfica is for the masses, if you will. So anyway, until Cristiano gets in here, let's get right into this Rio Ave game. I'll give you the lineup. Varela was in goal. André Almeida, Ruben Dias, Jardel, and Alex Grimaldo across the back. Feza, Pizzi, Zivkovic, Salvio, Jonas, and Servi were up front and in the midfield. So let me just, it's only fair, right? Because last week we did the show that we did. We broke down what we saw in João Carvalho after Korvinovic went down. We speculated who was going to fill in. We said João Carvalho. Some people said other things. Some people said go back to the 4-4-2. But here we are. João Carvalho did get his chance, didn't fare too well. And, I mean, we can't blame it a lot on him. I think that a lot has to do with the way the team performed also. But he didn't really take advantage of his chance. So now enter Zivkovic, a guy that we've been talking here for the longest time about being talented, being young, a guy that we don't understand why he doesn't get more opportunities from Rui Vitória. And now here he is making his debut in a midfield for Benfica. And from what I understand, and I didn't know this prior to the game, from what I understand, he used to play like this in his home country for the club. And was it Partizan, Steve? I always get that mixed up. Yep. He played in the midfield for Partizan. So let's talk through, before we get into the game. Let's talk through, Steve, what you see or what you saw from Zivkovic in this game, and how do you compare him as far as performance-wise to what João Carvalho was able to do?
Well, it's difficult to compare directly, even though they played the exact same positions. The games in terms of game situations and contexts were quite different. You had a Belenenses team that was a lot hungrier on a smaller pitch, and Benfica as a whole not playing very well compared to playing at home at the Luge against a team that um, Huave played quite well in the first half. Second half, that I, I, I almost want to say they were naive. I feel like they didn't close themselves down well enough when they didn't have the ball. They didn't press well enough. They didn't um, basically limit the spaces in where Benfica could play. I found we were finding it quite easy to play through them. Credit to the players that were out there. I mean, Zivkovic will have a part to play in this. The kid is extremely talented. In terms of technique alone, he's easily within the top five in the squad. I don't think there's an argument there. Um, but what he did do was he offered a very good understanding with the other two pint-sized left-footed players that play on the left side of the field. The understanding between him, Grimaldo, and Servi was phenomenal. I mean, for a combination that you didn't see all three of them before that I could think of playing so close to one another. I've seen Grimaldo and Servi together, obviously, quite often. I've seen Grimaldo and Zivkovic quite often. Well, not quite often, but a few times already, and that's looked good. But the three of them together in the second half just really tore apart Riwav, and that is that is something that I was very pleased to see. Zivkovic, up until now, has not played the part that we were expecting a player with his ability to play. I mean, Chris used to rant and rave about him with good reason. I mean, the kid is a phenomenal player, but there was always that little bit of mystery as to why he wasn't playing as much as a player with his type of technique, with his skill set, should play in a team like Benfica. I mean, he was, in terms of individual ability, he should be in the 11 every game. I mean, regardless of who you want to leave out because of him, if it's Servi himself, if it's Salvio, uh, now that you could see that in this type of position, the type of work he could do, if it's Pizzi, there's got to be a spot for technique that good, you'd have to think. But there's been time and time again, he's been left in the stands. He's been an unused substitute to the extent that we never even really thought of him. Not really, we never thought of him as a realistic solution for the Krovinovic role because we've never seen him often enough that we thought it was already somebody who was pushed aside. And gladly, it looks like that's not the case.
Yeah. And as Dave pointed out to us in the stats that he provided, Zivkovic's last time he started was back in September 23rd against Paços Ferreira. So merely, I think, probably a month into the season was the last time that Zivkovic has started. And since then, as you mentioned, Steve, we've seen him all over the place, from not making game rosters to not suiting up. So I was happy to see that he finally got a chance. To me, the biggest thing for Zivkovic, and I think that you already mentioned the technique, and I don't think anybody doubts that. I think that he's a very hard guy to dispossess when it comes to midfield play. And I think that when you're a guy that's going to be faced with a central midfielder that is going to try to stand you up or try to stop you, a guy with the ability to keep the ball and then to be able to find a pass, whether it's a through pass or whether it's a pass just to lay it off after pulling the pressure to you. I think that is probably one of the biggest features that I see Zivkovic thriving with in regards to the midfield. So I don't know if that's what you saw, but Cristiano has joined us. Cristiano, we're just talking about Zivkovic's performance. I don't know if you wanted to add something.
Played well. I mean, got to be honest. Well, first of all, what's going on, everybody? How you guys doing tonight? Look, Zivkovic is the type of player that we've grown accustomed to seeing play well with the ball at his feet, create. He's that type of player. So the only surprise here is that he's actually adapted to playing that central role. Because we all thought for a while he'd be best fitted to play out in the wings. So yeah, I mean, he played well, and he's which further cements in your head, like it kind of like makes you question all over again. I should say, why in the hell hasn't this guy been playing over the last couple of months?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, and we came to find out that every year he stays at Benfica, he gets a huge raise every season that he remains at Benfica. Benfica
Was that
doesn't
ever
sell.
confirmed though, Alfredo?
Well, it wasn't
I'm just
confirmed, but
asking.
it was apparently it
Okay.
was leaked, and nobody ever disputed. Benfica never denied that information was incorrect, and that was leaked out there along with what each player is making. So I don't know if I have reasons to deny it, but it's always been a head scratcher for us why Zivkovic wasn't getting more opportunities, especially with the fact that the left wing saw so much rotation from Gonçalves to Servi. Then we saw Rafa, but Zivkovic barely got any chances. So I'm happy for Zivkovic, but most of all, I'm happy that we have found a guy that could, in a way, fit in for what Krovinovic was giving us. And look, and we'll get into the game. And perhaps one game is way too early, as I think that the team really clicked in this game, and I think that so far in the season, the team hasn't shown the consistency from game to game that we expect, the consistency that the team has had in past championships that have allowed us to get the title. So now I'm curious to see how we progress from this, how Zivkovic progresses, how the midfield progresses from this. But about the game, we as we mentioned, Rio Ave was going to give us some difficulties. They did score one. They went up on us in the 9th minute, and I think it took a little bit of wind out of our sails, and it took us a little bit to readjust and to really answer to the goal. And it wasn't until like 30 minutes into the game that we started seeing more Benfica, and I think we finished the half. I know we finished the half clearly on top, and with the opportunity, or we probably had a couple opportunities that we should have went into the locker room at least leveled. And then in the second half, we came out. The Benfica played very well in the second half, and then we just poured on the goals from Jardel's goal to all the way to Jimenez, the 5-1 from the 49th minute to the 87th minute. It was a complete barrage. Jardel, who made his 200th appearance for Benfica, 12 goals, 14 assists, and 13 titles is what you could see on his resume. But most important, scoring from a corner, something that we don't do very often this season, Christian. And I'm going to go to you because you've been very critical of Jardel.
Well, look, man, when you mention I've been critical of Jardel, I've only been critical of Jardel when he has the ball at his feet. And as far as I know, he scored with his head, so that wasn't with his feet. So I'm still right on with that, I mean, look, Benfica, they had a tremendous game from the set pieces this weekend. I mean, they come out sluggish. A lot of goal, on the first shot of the game, it might have been, or one of two whole shots that Varela faced in the whole match. Definitely set the team back a little bit. But once they picked it up, they picked it up and they turned on the engines and they were able to create scoring chance after scoring chance. And terrific second half. The first half is nothing to talk about with the exception of, like I mentioned, very subpar goaltending at this point from Benfica. And I mean, we've gone over that now. We're past the January transfer window, so they're not going to touch that. So it is what it is. We're going to have to live with Varela until the remainder of the season unless he gets injured. But yeah, in the second half, Benfica was able to take advantage of the set pieces, and that's something a club like Benfica, with the caliber of players they have, guys with the talent to put the ball anywhere they want, that's something that they should have taken advantage more often, and they did so 3 times in this game, and so that's definitely a positive going forward.
Steve, one of the better second halves by Benfica this season, without a doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. From a good performance from basically everybody on the pitch. Ruben Diaz, I believe, scores a goal. If I remember, now I'm having a hard time
Yeah.
remembering. He scores a
Ruben
goal,
Diaz scored his first goal ever for Benfica. That was the fourth one.
and then was rock solid at the back, except for the goal, which left a couple guys not looking so great. Um, but aside from that, I think it looks like his ability with the ball is improving. If there's one thing that you can definitely see an improvement over Louison is that I you can Louison rarely connects with passes where he breaks that line of pressure and is able to find somebody in the midfield. Mostly long hoofs or just a lateral pass to Almeida is his his preference. But we saw on a number of occasions that Ruben was able to penetrate that first line of defense, which is something that is extremely important when you want to play football out of the back. It's like your number one thing that you want to be able to do. That is obviously, I don't want to take too much away from him, but there is a little bit of what I said earlier. I felt like Huav was a little bit naive when they didn't have the ball. I thought when they had the ball, they looked really good. That kid from Sporting is a joy to watch. I just love watching that kid. And even the one that now was it Novaj with
Yeah.
the shot that hits the post. Another looks like another good, talented Portuguese player.
Benfica product.
Really, I missed that.
Yeah.
I thought the converted center back that was playing at right back was the Benfica product.
Yeah. Novaes was also in the Benfica formation at one point.
There
I don't
you
know if
go.
he made it all the way to the juniors, but
He looks a
was
good
in.
player. He looks a good player. But no, it was a good performance from just about everything. I thought Pizzi played quite well, and I know Chris is going to come after me, of course, against Rio Ave and not Sporting in Porto, but he was more towards his better performances than his not so good performance. He was on that side of the spectrum. Jonas is what Jonas always does. I thought it was a half that, especially after Sporting slip up, will bring a lot of people back on board that fell off versus Bilnitz. So that's something to look forward to. Now we just gotta keep our noses down and keep on working, and hopefully, like you say earlier, like you said earlier, sorry, the consistency comes back, because for me that's the biggest difference from last year to this, or the previous years to this year. Um, we've done more or less what we do against the other two big teams, tie, sometimes lose, but it's the games against the so-called weaker teams where we've more often than not been able to find the 1-0 result, find the late 2-1 win. We've been missing those this year, and I think that's the difference for the most part from previous years to this.
Yeah. And Chris, let me throw this stat at you. First time Benfica has scored 3 goals from corner kicks. They had 8 goals so far this season from corner kicks, but first time that Benfica has scored 3 goals from corner kicks this season.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, they definitely took advantage of their opportunities, and kudos to them. You know, that's what good teams do. When you get few opportunities, especially in the game where the opposition's goalkeeper seems like to be having one of his better days and nothing seems to be going right, can't capitalize, and you get an opportunity like that, you put it away, and that's exactly what great teams do.
There you go. So, good,
Now,
important 3 points. Go ahead.
Just look. I'm not gonna get at Steve because he's like, I know it's against Rio. Steve, no criticism of your boy Peasy. That thing's
Not this
funny
time.
is that tremendous blast that he got on goal for that. You know, that was. I mean, you got to
Hey.
tip your cap to the guy.
That's
That
going
was
to lead us to
great
another
shot.
stat. Every time he scores, we win. So
That's
even
right.
if
but
he
I will.
scores them with his ass at this point, I'll
The
take him.
only thing I like to know, I mean, to answer to that is, I mean, and Dave, let's go get on this. I'd like to know how many of those victories, right? The 26 victories you're going to talk about, Steve. right? I want to know how many of
We're
those
against
were
Benfica
against
Porto Sport. Sorry, Porto
top
Sport.
three, top four, yeah, top three, top four in the standings.
I
I
knew
mean,
that
but
was
whatever, it is what it is. Look, he's got to put them away, and obviously by scoring that goal, it gave Benfica a little bit more breathing room. And look, as long as he plays well, I don't care. You know, like I said, look, last year, yeah, as you guys know, I'm not a big PZ fan, but I tip my cap to him, and he had a tremendous season. So as long as he helps us clinch the penta, that's all I'm worried about. My only concern, though, I mean, and I touched on this before, and I have to keep going back to it, is the goaltending. I mean, the goal was weak. Then a couple minutes later, another shot. He got beat near post from far. I mean, from the middle of the park. It's just a concern of mine. I mean, the team played really well. Not like Alfredo mentioned, not the greatest first 30 minutes of the game, but Benfica picked it up and nothing but positive after that. But the first 10 minutes, man, things got hairy. You know, it could have gone ugly. It could have gone real ugly.
Yeah. Jardel, Pizzi, Jonas, Diaz, and Jimenez all on a scoreboard. And Davis is correcting us. Ruben Diaz had scored, or correcting me. Ruben Diaz had scored in a Taça de Liga against Stubble this year. But yeah, the Ruben Diaz first goal in the league for Benfica. So thanks for that. So now we got Portimonense. We'll travel down to the Algarve this Saturday, 8:30 local, to play against a very, I would say, probably the Cinderella team of this league so far. Let me just run you down through some stats here. Portimonense.
Alfredo, do you
Go ahead.
mind? I'm sorry, bro. I know I always do this, guys, but I think I don't know if you guys touched on this. I'm sorry, I was having problems connecting earlier to getting on the hangouts here. I don't know if you guys touched on this prior to me arriving, but I wanted to touch on it before we move on to Portimonense, which was, and again, if you guys touch up on it, I apologize, but I'll just give you my 2 cents regarding that. Which is, look, it's a pity to see Salvio go down with an injury because you never want to see anybody go down with an injury, but you have to, you know, praise Rafa here. I thought he came into this game and he added a little bit some, the speed that he added to this game definitely changed in Benfica's favor. So I just wanted to tip my cap and I wanted to mention Rafa before we moved on to the next game, that I thought he did a good job. And if he plays this way and hopefully, little baby steps get his confidence up, and maybe we get to see anything or something close to what he was before he got to Benfica. But hopefully this is, first of many.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And we did discuss Rafa, but it was before we came on live. And the funny thing was that when Rafa, Steve and I were exchanging some texts while we were watching the game, when Rafa came on, I said, "Watch, Rafa's going to have a very good game, and he's going to have an assist." And sure enough, it wasn't a tremendous game, but it was decent from what we have been accustomed. And sure enough, the assist was there. So hopefully, I'm with you, Cristiano. I hope that he continues on that pace, and that he could be a really big contribution for Benfica down this last stretch, especially because we don't know the extent of the injury to Salvio. We do know that he hasn't been able to practice with the team, but so far the team hasn't revealed anything as far as the extent of his injury and how long he's going to be out. We just know that he's going to be out for the next coming games, if I'm not mistaken. Steve was trying to read something in Portuguese to me before, but I think I checked out at the first word he couldn't pronounce, and then he was trying to pronounce fancy medical terms, and I definitely had checked out by then. So let's get back to this Portimão, and Cristiano, thanks for bringing that up. 17 games. Let's see, 39 games overall against Portimonense, 31 wins, 8 draws for Benfica. Last 10, 8 wins, 2 draws. All time down at the Algarve, 17 games, 13 wins for Benfica, 4 draws. This season, we have won 1 game and we drew another one, 2-1. In the first round, Jonas and Andre Almeida. Was that the goal from Andre Almeida, the outside of his right foot?
Yeah, from the right side. Yeah,
right. So we almost tied that game had it not been for that goal. And then the 2-2 in the Taça de Liga, Jonas and Lisandro Lopes getting that goal. But we're facing a Portimonense, and as I mentioned, this is probably the Cinderella team of this year. Also a team that's been performing very well and has had very good outings. They spanked Rio Ave 4-1 before we faced Rio Ave. Now they spanked Marítimo 3-0 this past weekend. So a very informed team, and despite losing some guys, I think they lost a guy to Sporting, a left back to Sporting, which is that guy that JJ said, there was nothing out there and we had to go get something or whatever. It was the best that was available, something to that effect that JJ said. And he also lost Paulinho to Porto. But they haven't missed this step. So very tricky fixture for Benfica, and I think that we really need to focus on this game. And I think that the players and both the players in Rui Vitória know the importance of what it is to have to win these next games or the coming games, because as we have seen, both Porto and Sporting have dropped points, and it was something that perhaps earlier in the season we didn't think it was possible. Now all of a sudden they're all running into a phase where some of them have injuries. They have a very congested fixture list, so we have to take advantage of the opportunity. Had we won at Belenenses at this point, we would have been in first place. So we need to continue to win those games. Steve, what's your thought on this Portimonense fixture?
It's a game that, given what we did in Belém just last week, it will throw out a few alarms, especially given the form that this team is in. At least one player that I find quite interesting, the Japanese kid Nakajima, looks like a pretty good player. I think both Porto and Sporting were linked to him in the transfer window, but he ended up staying. You like to call them trap games. I don't know if it's a trap game when
I wouldn't call this a trap game.
Well, not because this one we know what they're capable of, but it's not to say that it's not a team that we could beat. If we go out there and give the effort that you would expect from Benfica, it should be a competitive game, but there should only really be one winner. So let's hope that it comes out to that.
Hey, Cristiano, so far we haven't achieved that consistency that has gotten championships, and I was mentioning this earlier. You think that Benfica is on the right path to start on those consistencies and put a good run together?
I mean, if you go based on the last 15 minutes of this past week's first half and the second half, and look, let's be honest, guys. You take away that performance in Belém, Benfica have been playing really well, in particular ever since the game, against Sporting. Benfica's been on the uptick. I think they've been playing better of late. Some of these guys seem to have been getting in form and rhythm and game rhythm, which is positive. The tandem of Jardel and Ruben Diaz is kind of like calmed things down in the back. And so, I mean, there's a lot of positives going forward, guys. And so let's just hope they keep this consistency. This is a Portimonense team that's been playing very well over the last couple of weeks. But let's not forget, man, they've won 6 games out of 21 played in the Liga Portuguesa. It's not like we're going up against the 2004 Football Club de Porto here. So, I mean, I expect Benfica to go on the road. I know it'll be tough. This team tries to play football. They do have a couple of quality players. I think, to me, the most impressive thing about Portimonense so far has been they lose key players. I mean, the guy that went to Football Club de Porto was one of their better players, and they just haven't seemed to miss the beat. They've been playing really well late. So it'll be a tough game, but I still think Benfica has the obligation. I say this every single game, guys. I mean, just roll back the tape from 3 years ago to now. When Benfica plays these types of games on the road, I always say Benfica has the obligation to win this game. And if you really want to be taken serious as a championship contender here, and I know they're right there. But if you want to take this thing serious, you have to win these games on the road. There's absolutely no excuse, and I expect Benfica to do that come this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, how does my mic sound now?
Sounds better. Yeah.
Okay. No problem.
You were sounding crazy there, but I didn't want to say nothing. Right, Cristiano. Yeah, it was kind of crazy.
Well, thank you for letting me know. So anyway, transfer window is closed, and I guess I know we spoke about this, but I could give you a recap of what Benfica did. The only player in, but again, I don't know if it counts as an in, being that he got loaned out to Crystal Palace. Erdal Rakip Out Hermes, loaned out to Cruzeiro. Lisandro Lopes, loaned out to Inter. Diego Lopes transferred to Rio Ave. I think that might have been on permanent. Pedro Pereira, loaned to Genoa. Felipe Augusto, loaned to Alanya Sport. Gabagol, loan terminated, and he was sent to Santos. Cesar, loaned to Juventude. And Salvador Agra, loaned to Granada. So that was Benfica's transfer window.
I mean, Alfredo, let's go over that one more time, real quick. With the exception of the Agras and the Cesars, right? Name me the guys that back in August or late August, because that's really when Gabigol got there. How many of those guys were part of the first team? Pedro Pereira, 1. Lisandro, 2. Gabigol, 3. Who else? There's more.
That's it.
No, Felipe Augusto.
Felipe Augusto, 4, exactly. 4. So that's 4 guys that at the beginning of the season, whether it was Rui Vitoria, Luis Felipe Vieira, Rui Costa, whomever the hell it was,
counted them.
4 guys that at the beginning of the season, or forget the beginning of the season, in the off season, they sat down and they had to have these meetings, right? All those guys that I just mentioned. And they all came to a conclusion that all these guys would be valuable assets for this upcoming season. Now they leave, again, valuable assets, contributors for this upcoming season. They all leave and they don't bring in anybody. I mean, how ludicrous does that sound? It's just crazy. It's crazy.
Well, it's more of a cleanup job than anything else, I would think.
Fine, but still, the fact that they didn't bring in reinforcements to replace 4 guys, whether you think they were key or not, those are still 4 guys that were part of the plantel coming into the season.
Yeah,
I still think it's crazy that they didn't get anybody else. But I mean, I think it was Dave, right? Dave came up with with the stats and whatever. I think Benfica and Boavista, the only 2 teams not to bring in anybody this season, right? With this this transfer window, I should say.
Yeah, that's right. But Cristiano, here's my thoughts: is that they get rid of these guys who they didn't feel could contribute, and now they're opening it up to some of the B team players. Today, there were 6 B team players in practice. Jetson, Keaton Parks, Ferro.
Felix.
Who was it?
Felix. And I think
and there was one more.
The guy they call Jota, wasn't it?
All right, but here's the thing. Even if those guys, and I hope they do come up, and I hope that they at some point contribute. But you expect any of those guys to contribute, like this weekend per se, if they're going to go, maybe Keaton Parks is a guy that's played and obviously they've had confidence in him. How many of those guys right there you mentioned are going to come into this team right now? Look, we're looking at Felipe Augusto and Lisandro Lopes. Those guys were regulars on the team. Felipe Augusto was starting games at the beginning of the season. Look, I'm not trying to go back into that, but it's just a conversation to be had. It's definitely a question that should be asked. We're talking about guys that were regulars, and now we're talking about B team players coming up, and even if they do come up and they get called up to the game day roster, how many of them are really going to play? So it's look, man, it's a conversation to be had.
I think it's about the exposure. It's about the growth experience. And I think that as guys from the B team, they're perhaps not going to harbor any resentment towards Rui Vitória because they're not getting enough playing time. But that's not to say they're going to be playing with the A team or practicing or training with the A team every single day. They got called. But I think that to me, that's the direction that the team wants to go into. Already start looking at guys that could possibly be making training camp come next preseason. And for sure, this bunch of players, I think these 6 players were ones to keep an eye on, especially Keaton Parks. And I know Cristiano and I have seen Felix, up and close. We know that he's a great talent. If you watched him on TV, you also know that. So, and then Jetson is a kid that has a lot of potential that we spoke about as maybe Rui Vitória going and getting him after the Krovinovic injury to tap into him. And look, these are all kids with great potential, and I think they're being rewarded for their evolution so far and for their growth so far. So, I mean, take it as you will. I think, to me, look, Pedro Pereira, I thought that Pedro Pereira could have gotten, a lot more chances than Douglas. if you're going to go that way, unless right off the bat, Rui Vitória thought that the kid was no good. Felipe Augusto, I think he tried, but he was just a mediocre player. And then Gabigol, he had those problems, and probably Benfica was paying a large part of his salary, so he needed to let him go. And Lisandro Lopes, I just think that Benfica took advantage of a deal of a player that has some potential and may have some market on outside. So take it as you will. Cristiano, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else while I look here for some Twitter questions.
No, I'm good. I just find it odd. And I mean, look, you bring up good reasons, and I understand that part of the game, but it just, as a fan, it just bothers me. It's hard to sit here and think of 4 key players that in the offseason management thought these guys would be a crucial part of your roster. And these are guys that, Pedro Pereira, okay, forget Pedro Pereira, but he was part of the plan. Pedro Pereira really didn't get no burn, but Lisandro did, just like Felipe Augusto did. And the fact that you let these guys go and really bring nothing back, it just, as a fan, I'm not too happy about it. But I understand the business part of it. I understand they're trying to promote the youth. They're trying to get younger, especially like Steve has mentioned over the last couple of pods, man. There's no money. They got to promote the youth. They got no other choice.
Yeah.
So I understand it.
So here's the first one from Benfiquinho. While he wasn't Krovinovic, Zivkovic showed some great vision and in particular, several great potential through balls to link up with Jonas. Is he the answer to the concerns in the midfield? Cristiano, I'll let you go. Between João Carvalho and Zivkovic, who's your choice?
I think I've made my feelings be known over the last 3 weeks or so. Hands down, Zivkovic. João Carvalho might be one for the future, but he's not ready now.
Here's the next one from Faces Doctor, who has been very
I like that.
Very slow as of late. Who's this Faces Doctor? He's got 2 followers. I'm gonna follow him. Does João Felix rumored promotion to the first team next year signal the end of André Horta's time at Benfica? Steve, you want to get that?
Bit early to say. André Horta is another player that has a lot more question marks than answers, really, with not so much his ability, but to what his status is at the club, how we feel about him. I remember him having some good moments with the club and then just really never really seeming to get his foot back in the door. I think it's too early to make that type of decision. Something that I wasn't aware of about Horta was supposedly we got approached by Los Angeles. I don't know if they have a new club out there in the MLS in Los Angeles. And supposedly they offered Benfica $7 million, and when we turned it down, it was one of the deals that we weren't able to close off. They said in January in the article that I read. With the Umbaru and Talisca deals also being included. I think André Horta at this point, if he was in the squad, he'd probably be first in line to play that Krovinovic role that is now open, but that's not the way things worked out.
Yeah. The only way Horta makes it back on this roster is if there's a coaching change. I mean, I think
that's your feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've had plenty of opportunity. There's been question marks over the last 2 seasons about guys to play the similar roles and I don't think he fits what Vitória wants. Maybe if there's a coaching change, a new coaching tactician to come in and want a little bit more possession. I don't know. I just don't see it. I think whether Felix comes up or not, I think Horta's days at Benfica are numbered.
Yeah, could be. I think that there's definitely something extra going on there. I don't think it has anything to do with the kid's ability. I think that there's some ulterior things going on that are preventing him from getting the chance to play. But look, if he proves himself at Braga, and if he can make his way back, if Rui Vitória will have him, or if Benfica could sell him for good money. I like the guy because he's a Benfiquista, and he often shows that he's a huge Benfiquista with the way he carries himself. And I would like to obviously see him back, but if it's not a fit, who knows? Also, Facer's doctor also says that the midfield would be crowded with Pizzi, Krovinovic, Zivkovic, Carvalho, Parks, and Jetson fighting for two positions. Yeah, it'd be very crowded. But that also depends on what system we decide to play. So leave it at that. Here's one from Joãozinho. Will the game against Belenenses come back to haunt us at the end of the season?
Let's hope not.
I mean, I think it's already. I mean, we've already seen the ripple effect of the game against Belenenses to the fact that if hadn't we lost, we didn't lose. We tied Belenenses, correct? Hadn't we tied Belenenses, we'd probably be in a better position at the table without a doubt right now. So let's hope not, because oftentimes it's these little games that you look back and you realize this is where the championship could have gone a different way. But let's hope not. Il Capo Soprano, Malzão, financially 17-18 has been a disaster for Benfica. No Champions League money. Breakdown of big money sales of Talisco and Paulo and Andrea Horta. Cristanto's release clause is only $4 million despite his fantastic form at Atlanta. Atlanta, which, by the way, is asking for $36 million for Cristanto. That was the latest. Thoughts on finances, Steve? No money, honey.
Yeah, that's the way I'm feeling about it. I still think there's still going to be sales. I mean, I think, sadly, Ruben Dias might have a price tag over his head by the time the summer comes around. Krovinovic's injury just left him at the club for one more year for sure. But the financial side is so hard to read. I mean, the debt never comes down. Players keep getting sold. It's really hard to get a grasp on what's really going on when it comes to the finances of the club. Let's just leave it at that. That's the way I look at it. I mean, sometimes you see like quick deals where that one with the Umbaru kid looked like for sure it was just to put a patch on some loan that was about to mature, or however the proper terminology is. But that didn't end up happening. But it really reminded me of when we sent Cancelo, Gomes, and Bernardo out for 15 mil each. It was just like, okay, here's a guaranteed 45 mil. Let's use that for whatever we need, whatever hole we need to plug in, and that's how that went. But I don't think we're not in a place to say no to money when it's flashed at us. So I think those deals probably were more made up or not as concrete offers as they may have sounded. I think especially the Talisca one. I mean, if someone was offering money for Talisca, who's basically burnt his bridges at the club, unless he really refused the move, and that's that put the brakes on it, I can't see us ever saying no to it.
Yeah, but I mean, from what I understand, I believe we renewed with Talisca recently. No.
Yeah, it was just so that his contract didn't expire, I believe, and we got money for him.
They probably raised his release clause.
Yeah, that's most likely what they did. But look, I'm gonna say something that Steve's not gonna agree with, but I would not mind seeing him back at Benfica next season. I think he's played well out in Turkey. He's definitely switched positions. He's more of a second striker than he is a center midfielder like he was at Benfica, a guy that had to track back. He's got more of a free role going forward, and he's played really well over there. So, I mean, I would not mind seeing him right now on this team. It's just, look, I've always liked him a little bit better than Steve, and I voiced that over the years. But I think the way he's played at Besiktas, I think it's definitely something that Benfica should keep an eye on. I understand that there might be a market for him. I understand that it might be big offers. But if those offers aren't exactly what Benfica is expecting, I think bring him back. I think he could definitely add to the squad. I know when he scored last season in the Champions League at Benfica, he rubbed some people off, rubbed some people the wrong way because he celebrated. I get all that, but look, I don't really have a problem with that. You have to celebrate for the team you're playing, for, and at that time it was Benfica, and I think that his relationship could be repaired with the fans, and I think he'd definitely be a good addition to next year's squad. Just my 2 cents on that.
No, I'll take 3 Tarabs before I take Talisca at our team.
I second that notion.
Here's one from Matthew Agostinho. Being tied in second and now only 2 back behind Porto, even though they still have their makeup game. Do you think we got a shot at the title? Look, and the guys can jump in afterwards. I think that from the moment that you're not automatically or mathematically eliminated, you're always going to have a shot at the title. What we've been saying here is there's certain patterns and the way the team has performed and the way certain things that the team has shown us while playing every weekend that it's a little bit discouraging. Now, is it possible they could turn it around? I mean, it's very possible. I mean, at one point they were down 8 points and they were able to win the league. So anything is possible at this time. We just saw discouraging things in Benfica's past performances this year. That doesn't mean that now all of a sudden it's like we're all gung-ho about Benfica winning the Penta. We sure would love to see Benfica win the Penta, but I think that we have to look at things for what they are, and there's a certain level of performance that the team has to put out and
maintain.
And maintain, correct. And one of the things is consistency. So if you are consistent, and if you take this or 3 weeks ago or the game against Sporting as a starting point of your consistency, and you could put in consistency week in, week out, knowing that your fixture list is not as congested as your direct opponents, there's a very, very good chance that come May that you're going to be celebrating at the Marquês again. But again, we need to see consistency, and we need to see good performances, and we need to see wins. We need to see 3 points. And I think that once Benfica does that, I think that we're in good shape. Cristiano, what do you think, Cristiano?
About
Benfica winning the championship.
I'm still stuck on the Talisca thing. I think if Benfica keeps up the performances we saw the second half at home, albeit at home, and I mean, I know Benfica a totally different team playing on the road, but if they could keep these performances up and create chance after chance, and get the players in that deserve to play, players that are at the top of their game, I think Benfica will definitely have a chance. I mean, right now, they're a few points back, and Porto has to make up that half against Estoril. Estoril, that, mind you, added 5 new players to its roster. Just slapped Sporting around at home. So it would definitely not be an easy task for Porto to make up those 3 points. But, Benfica still has to play Sporting, still has to play Porto. Still a lot of games to be played. And I tell you, I'd rather be 2 points behind than be a possible 5 or 7 points like we were looking at just a couple weeks ago.
Yep. Here's the last one from Big Kev. Thoughts on Benfica finally scoring on corner kicks? It's about time, Kevin. And if Rafa starts the next game and does well, do you keep him starting even if Salvio is healthy the week after? Steve?
I don't believe that would happen.
I mean, we've seen Salvio sit so many people that we thought he should have deserved to start over him.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. I think Rafa could tear the league apart for 2 games, and Salvi would come back into the starting lineup. Following that, it's just been the way Rui Vitória has handled him. With this year, Salvi's been doing what Salvi normally does in terms of some poor decisions and losing the ball, but for the most part, he's been quite good. Especially when you take into the fact that last year he was quite bad and kept playing. This year he's been quite good. I can't see him not playing, especially with this new 4-3-3 system. It's quite important for me anyway that the wide guys know how to get into the box, know how to score goals, and if there's one part of Salvio's game that's quite strong, it is that. So I don't see Salvio being dropped for anybody at this rate.
Yeah. It's that diagonal run from across the field that he does so well that 50% of the time he controls the ball well, other times it goes off his still.
Yeah, and it's also he arrives well in the box at the second post and whatnot. No, it's definitely a facet of his game, the goal scoring, and that's got to be important when you're only playing with one guy up top, like the English guys like to say. Even if that guy is Jonas, that extra bit of goal scoring ability is extremely important.
Yeah, I think that Rafa would have to go on a tremendous tear. Dave, what do you think? What do you think the chances are that if Rafa goes on a tear, when Salvio comes back, he will start?
I don't think the only way that he has a role if Salvio comes back from injury is to put him on the wing and then drop Salvio back into the mid there with Pizzi and Feja. But even then, I still don't think that's more of a probability of that happening.
You would think that Salvio would play well in the middle with Pizzi and Feja?
That's the only way that I would see Rafa. If he comes out and tears it up.
Rafa.
Yeah. If Rafa tears it up while Salvio is out, keep him up there on the wing and then have Salvio more play in the midfield. But other than that, I don't really even see that happening.
And there you go. I think that's all we got. And on that note, we will leave you. Next week, we will be back breaking down this Portimonense game and looking ahead to Benfica's next fixture, which will be Boa Vista at Estádio da Luz. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks to our friends over at planetbenfica.co.uk. And as I mentioned, if you haven't checked out Conversas a Benfica with Nuno Gomes, Sergio Engracia was actually kind and gracious enough to ask us for a question for us to present to Nuno Gomes. So we're very glad that we got that opportunity. And that's pretty much it. Planetbenfica.co.uk. I think I already mentioned that. At 10CO10 is where you can find Cristiano on Twitter. At Steve Santos 6 is where Steve resides. At Benfica Podcast, also on Twitter, and that's it. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, all that good stuff. Thank you very much for checking us out, and we'll talk again next week. See you, everybody.